Hi, welcome back to Let's Talk Sports. My name is Gene Wiles, and I'm here as new head wrestling coach, Riley McClurg. How are you doing today, Coach?
Great, Jaden. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So just to get started here, tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are now, from your time at Roncalli to Warren to Greenfield-Central.
Yeah, so I was really blessed and lucky as a young coach coming out of college and having a coaching job immediately and having a lot of responsibility because my brother. As I was graduating college, my brother took over the head coaching job at Roncalli, and it was our dream since we were little kids wrestling in the living room was to coach a wrestling team together. And so I was really lucky that I got to learn under my brother, who had at that time had been coaching for 10 years, coached me through high school. So I got to spend 5 years with him, and really we got to build a program together, and I got to watch him lead. And I would say that's where I get my deep passion for the sport and for coaching from is from my brother. And so after 5 years at Roncalli, he took the head assistant coaching job at Indiana Tech in Fort Wayne, Indiana. So we got to go coach college wrestling. And so it was a big crossroads for me. I didn't really trust anyone else to coach with other than my brother. So at the time, I had some people that reached out to me from Warren Central. They had just had a new head coaching change. And their head coach reached out to me and was willing to take a risk on me. And so I jumped in, all 10 toes. And so spent a great 4 years at Warren Central and I was just been itching for the past couple years to be a head coach. And this was year 10. And so, that's what led me here, right? I was really lucky. I got to learn and coach alongside some really great people along the way. Selfishly, I think my brother's probably the greatest coach in the country, if you ask me. But got to coach with one of my best friends and college teammates, and Nick Ellis at Warren Central. So it's pretty cool how it all came full circle.
So what are some of your goals going into not just next season, but long term? Is it conference championships or maybe something bigger?
Yeah, when I sat in the meeting with Mr. Manning in my interview and Mr. Walbaum and Miss Mercer, I laid out about a 3 to 5 year plan of where we should be, right? And I think I'm not trying to jump the gun, but the long-term goal is team state titles, right? And we want to be a perennial presence at the individual state tournament, right? And so, really the goal is the short-term goal. I would say right now is we're aiming to go get a conference title. We're aiming to go win a sectional title. The long-term goal is to go win a 3A team state duals title. Get us back in that spotlight, get us back in that top 8 recognized in the state, like I think we are. That's the number one goal, right? But then also we need to be a perennial powerhouse, and we need to put guys down at Gamebridge Fieldhouse in downtown Indianapolis every year. At Greenfield-Central needs to be synonymous with the state championships.
So what kind of culture and expectations do you hope to install here in Greenfield-Central?
Yeah, lucky for me, I'm the youngest of 2 older brothers, so I got to watch Greenfield-Central from the late 90s to the early 2000s where my brother graduated, and they dueled Greenfield-Central every year. They were in the same sectional. So I was around, and to me, Greenfield-Central has always been synonymous with wrestling. And so there's not something in here that we've got to come in and create a new love for wrestling, right? I think wrestling's alive and well in the city of Greenfield, and especially in the school district, right? I think what we need to do is we need to stop taking a back seat to kids. We need to stop taking a back seat to other people, really, not just to anybody. We need to have the self-belief and the confidence, that we belong, right? And we deserve to win. And that's going to take us really far. So in terms of a culture aspect, we've kind of set the standard as a team of what it takes. We do a really good job of communicating and not putting people on the spot, but we talk out loud and what our goals are, and here's how we're going to get to them. And the standard's set in the room. They understand how it is, what it's expected in the practice room. They know what's expected on the weekends. As far as like the culture, it starts from the ground up. And so the first thing we did when we got the job is we made sure we got the club off the ground, right? And we went from having probably 10, 12, 15 kids in the club last year. We had 70 kids sign up for the first session. We've got 50 kids in the room for the second session. And that's just K through 5 right now. So, the middle school team's running. So, we're in a really good spot. And that's what the goal is, right? That's what's going to give us long-term success.
So earlier you talked about wanting to win team state titles, but also individual state titles. Having been a state champion yourself, what do you think it takes to achieve that goal?
Man, so a lot of people think it happens overnight, right? Like I said, I'm the youngest of 3 boys. Both of my brothers wrestled through college. So I got to experience what a lot of people don't get to see it from a young age. I started wrestling when I was about 3 or 4 years old. So to put it in perspective, it took me 14 years to win a state title, right? And for some people, right, it can happen in a much shorter time frame. I think the thing for me was, what it takes. Like I said, the kids here are really good at wrestling, and that's the one thing we lack is self-belief and confidence, right? The one thing is that we need to believe that we belong, right? And I think that takes you miles. That takes you miles, right? It doesn't matter how good you are at wrestling. If you don't believe you belong, it doesn't matter how good you are really at any sport or anything you do in life. If you don't believe you belong, if you don't believe you're better than other people, you're going to struggle to reach the peak of whatever you're chasing in life. And so that's the big thing for me, right, is we've got really talented individuals. We've got kids that love wrestling. We got kids that have tremendously grown just through this season, right? But they need to start believing in it, right? They need to start believing how good they are and how good we see them as a staff, right? Once we start having that self-belief in our, now it's going to spread like wildfire, right? And with self-confidence comes, tough individuals and easy and coachable kids. So, I think that's, to sum it up, man, you can be as good as wrestling, right, or good at the sport as you want to be. You got to be tough, and you got to believe that you belong. And so that's the big thing that I think, we've got a lot of kids that don't. I think we've got 4, 5, 6 kids that can go place at the state tournament next year. But we need them to go. We need them to believe that, not me.
So in your first year here, you guys obviously faced a lot of adversity, from losing guys to injury and other stuff. How did you and the team handle that adversity? Man,
so talk about a crazy year as a first-year head coach, right? I'm super proud. That's one thing I always evaluate myself at the end of a season and evaluate my staff and evaluate us as a team. And man, they threw about every Tim Wakefield knuckleball they could at us this year. And I'm really proud of how we handled it, man. We had 5 kids at the beginning of the season that were in the starting lineup that at the end of the year weren't. And it wasn't because they got beat out or it wasn't because they flunked off, right? Injuries were bad. Some people had, changes of heart. And that's things as a coach, it sucks because you can't control, right? And we could have sat there as a coaching staff and moped about it. And, oh, man, this stinks, and we could have been, or this could have been. No, it's next man up, right? And that's the philosophy we have to instill. And it turned out really well, man. We have a really young team. And I'm glad. I'm really glad how the season turned out. Now, did it turn out in a conference and a sectional title like we had hoped? No, but we got 12 of the 14 kids on that sectional roster coming back. 8 out of the 9 regional qualifiers coming back, and Andrew Hecox, who's a semi-state qualifier, is coming back. And the average age of our team is around 16 years old. We're set for success.
So what have been some of the main differences between coaching from Roncalli to Warren to now Greenfield-Central, from the kids but to the environment too? Yeah,
so Roncalli's one of the closest knit and coolest environments I've ever been a part of, right? It's kind of, I didn't graduate from an SEC school or like an Ivy League school, but people talk about, I think, something like Wabash is a really good comparison, right? Like the people who graduate from there, like they have like a brotherhood bond, right? And one of the coolest things about Roncalli was that, right? Alumni from 20, 30, 40 years ago cared about you, really cared about the program and had a lot of involvement in the school. Warren Central, I mean, they love athletics there, right? And it's something that they invest a lot of time in to develop their kids. And so that was a very neat aspect, right? I'd never been a part of a 6A school with 4,500 kids or close to 4,500 kids in it, right? And seeing how that is operated and how it's managed, I think that really gave me the confidence as a coach, like, dude, you can handle anything, right? From 1,200 kids or 1,400 kids at Roncalli to 4,500 kids. I think I can handle anything from in between. And so Greenfield-Central, to me, reminds me a lot of what I was talking about with Roncalli, is the community, right? We don't have to pay to go to school here, right? We're not a private school. But the pride in this community and how tight-knit the alumni is. We had our first annual golf outing, in September, and to see alumni and, Coach Yo and a lot of different wrestlers come out to support, and so many different people, past and present, donating. They care a lot about Greenfield-Central wrestling, right? And that's what drew me here, is because of that. Like, Greenfield-Central is synonymous with wrestling, and there's no reason why we should not be a presence every year.
So to wrap this up, what kind of legacy do you want to leave here at Greenfield-Central when it's all said and done?
Ooh. I don't know, man. 7 months ago, I would have told you something a lot different. Probably something a little more egotistical and, sorry, a little emotional, but probably something a little more like, I want to leave behind something, a culture, or, or a bunch of titles or this and that. But, the first thing I want to do is I want to leave something behind that my son's proud of, right? He's too young to understand right now what I'm doing and how much I care. And, he's up there in a pumpkin seat every Saturday with his mom watching us for 8 hours or however long we're out there. So, I'm hoping that when he's here in a couple years and he starts recognizing why Dad disappears for 4 to 5 hours every night, I hope I leave something behind that he's proud of, right? Whether he wrestles or not, right? I hope he sees the hard work that, and the time and the care and the love that not only me, but my coaching staff and my family and everybody involved at Greenfield-Central Wrestling, that I hope that we leave something behind that it would be really cool to leave behind some state titles and all that. But, the number one goal is to make these kids that come in here and want to be a part of Greenfield-Central Wrestling, making them better men, prepared to tackle the world. That's the number one goal. But, then number two goal will be, winning matches and winning a lot of medals. But, the number one thing for me is I want to leave something behind for, Riley McClurg and, 20 years down the road that, he looks back and sees something and goes, man, that's pretty cool. My dad did that, and I grew up and I got to experience it, right? I grew up with Jaden Wiles. I got to watch Jaden Wiles, or I got to watch Kanan Shores do this, being a little kid and involved in this program. So, in short, I'd love to leave something behind that, my son's really proud of.
All right, well, thank you. That's all the time we have today. I want to thank Coach McClurg for coming down here and doing this, and thank you for watching.
Thanks.
See you next time.